What kind of man trades his wife's life for power? People flock to him in worship, believing he is chosen by God. His sermons are passionate, and many say he has the power to heal with just a touch. But beneath the surface lies a dark secret. His wife has gone missing, and nobody seems to ask why. Everything changes when a strange call leads the police to a locked basement where they uncover a shocking truth that rocks the entire country. What seemed like a display of faith is hiding something evil. A leader is exposed. This is a true tale that all begins with one woman's mysterious disappearance. It was a hot Sunday afternoon in Accra. The sun was resting heavily on the rooftops, and the air smelled like sweat, dust, and roasted groundnuts. Inside the massive compound of Grace Tower International Ministries, worship had ended. The crowd had gone. Ushers were locking gates. Choir members were packing instruments. But one man remained, Daniel Mensah, a 62-year-old church cleaner with crooked knees and a mop that squeaked louder than a rat in a plastic bucket. He moved slowly through the pastor's private corridor, humming an old hymn and wiping down the shiny tiles. He had cleaned this place for 11 years, never missed a day. Pastor always told him, "Daniel, even heaven notices your mop." So today, like every other Sunday, Daniel entered the one place no one else was allowed, the pastor's private basement. Only the pastor had the key, but the key was already in the door. Strange. Daniel frowned. "This door is never open like this. What happened?" he muttered. He pushed gently. It creaked open like the mouth of a secret. The air inside was cold, too cold for Ghana. He stepped inside. The lights were off, but a strange glow filled the room. Candles, dozens, maybe hundreds, burning around a black table draped in red cloth. Daniel's heart skipped. "Jesus," he gasped. At the center of the table, resting on a silver tray, was something wrapped in white lace. Something round, something wet. Daniel stepped closer. His breath caught in his throat. A human head, a woman's head. Her eyes were closed, lips painted, hair tied in the exact scarf Mama Evelyn used to wear. Daniel staggered back. "What? Am I dreaming?" he whispered. His hands shook. He tried to run, but his knees failed him. He crawled backward, eyes still fixed on the head. Evelyn Owusu, Pastor Nathan's wife. Footsteps upstairs, a door slammed. Daniel got up and ran, barefoot, wild, crashing into chairs and knocking down a flower vase. He burst outside, screaming, "Call police! Call the police! Something is downstairs! Something wicked!" The compound froze. Then chaos erupted. Phones came out. Ushers ran. One woman fainted. Another shouted, "What are you saying?" Daniel kept crying. "Mama Evelyn, her head. I saw it. I saw it with my eye, in Pastor's basement." But nobody moved. They just stared at him. Then someone whispered, "Where's Pastor Nathan?" And nobody had an answer. Before the screams and sirens, before the shrine, before the tears, Pastor Nathan Owusu was a man people called the Prophet of Light. Every Sunday, thousands flooded Grace Tower International Ministries. They didn't just come for preaching. They came to see wonders. Blind eyes opened, crippled legs walked, women who hadn't conceived in 12 years returned months later with twins. And every time, Pastor Nathan would lift his arms, smile gently, and say, "It is not me, it is God." He wore crisp white suits, his beard was always trimmed, his shoes never had a speck of dust, and his smile, that smile, was warm like sunrise after Harmattan. People trusted him. Women called him Daddy, men called him Papa. Children hugged his legs without fear. His wife Evelyn was just as loved. Calm, graceful, always sitting on the front row with her Bible held close. She wasn't loud. She didn't speak in tongues. But her presence alone calmed storms. People whispered that she was the real anointing behind the altar. But inside that mansion, behind closed curtains and locked doors, things were changing. It started small. Evelyn would enter the bedroom and find red chalk markings on the mirrors. Nathan said, "It's part of a spiritual exercise, nothing to worry about." But her spirit wasn't at peace. One night, she saw him staring at the wall, not blinking, not moving, for hours. When she called him, he just turned and smiled. "I'm preparing for elevation," he said. Another time, she found her favorite wedding photo, burnt at the edges, stuffed under the mattress. When she asked him, his eyes darkened. "You ask too many questions," he said quietly. Soon, he started sleeping in the basement. He said it was for prayer and fasting. But one night, Evelyn tiptoed to the door and heard chanting. Not prayer, not worship, chanting. In a voice she didn't recognize, she tried to confront him. "Nathan, what is happening to you?" He smiled, that same sweet smile, and said, "Some doors must open by force, and some lights are born in darkness." That night, Evelyn called her younger brother Michael and whispered into the phone, "If anything happens to me, check the basement." But Michael never got the chance, because 3 nights later, Evelyn vanished. And Pastor Nathan told the church she has traveled to London for a women's conference. No one questioned him. Not yet. After Evelyn disappeared, everything changed, but only behind the scenes. On the surface, Grace Tower International grew even bigger. New tents were erected outside to accommodate overflow crowds. Sunday services now had drones flying over the congregation for live broadcast. The miracles, they multiplied. A girl born deaf suddenly began to sing. A man brought in on a stretcher walked home unaided. "Glory," they screamed. "This man carries fire." But the people closest to Pastor Nathan noticed something strange. He no longer prayed with the other pastors before service. He no longer sat beside the choir for worship. His sermons grew darker. Less about love, more about judgment, about sacrifice, about dying to self and giving God what hurts. One Friday night, after an all-night vigil, a junior pastor named Eric stayed back to tidy the altar. He bent to pick up a fallen microphone cord and noticed something odd. Ashes, black and thick, under the pulpit. Not incense ashes, bone ashes. He touched it, and his fingers tingled. The next morning, his eyes were red, and he couldn't stop vomiting. He told his wife, "Something is wrong with that altar." She begged him to keep quiet. "Don't say such things. Do you want to disappear too?" That week, the church accountant also left suddenly. The head usher resigned via text message. People said it was stress, but Eric knew better. He remembered Evelyn's smile. How she once said during a couple's retreat, "Marriage is about knowing when your partner is hiding pain behind a smile." Now, every time Pastor Nathan smiled, it felt different. Then came the Wednesday deliverance service. Midway through the worship, a woman began to scream, loud, raw screams like her soul was on fire. She pointed at the pulpit and shouted, "There's blood under that altar! Blood! Blood!" Security rushed her out. Pastor Nathan didn't flinch. He only lifted his Bible and declared, "The devil is fighting revival." But that moment broke something in the crowd. Doubt began to spread like smoke in a locked room. And backstage, Daniel the cleaner stood frozen, because he had seen the same blood, not under the altar, but downstairs, in that cold, candlelit room. Still, nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Because how do you accuse a man who opens blind eyes? How do you question a prophet whose touch brings babies to barren wombs? So they stayed quiet, until the night Daniel finally called the police. It was 2:14 a.m. when the call came in. "This is not an emergency line, sir." Daniel's voice trembled. "Please, I'm telling you, there's a human head in Pastor Nathan's basement." The officer on duty paused. "Head? What are you saying?" Daniel swallowed hard. "His wife, Evelyn, I saw it, in the shrine. There were candles, blood, things I can't explain. If you wait too long, he'll move it." For a moment, the line went silent. Then the officer asked for the church address. By 3:30 a.m., 2 unmarked police vans parked a few meters away from Grace Tower. The gates were locked, the compound quiet. No lights. Just the glow of the moon bouncing off the church's giant gold cross. The officers, serious-faced, entered the compound. They had a search warrant, quietly signed by a judge who owed his son's healing to Pastor Nathan's anointing. He signed it with a shaky hand, whispering, "Let truth come out." Inside the compound, Daniel led the way. His feet knew the path too well. He didn't speak, just pointed. The basement door was still unlocked. The moment they opened it, a strange coldness hit their skin. It wasn't natural. The candles were still burning. Red ones, black ones. Some had burned so low they hissed and sputtered on the floor. And then they saw it. A low table, surrounded by salt, cowrie shells, and torn Bible pages. At the center, a metal basin. Inside it, Evelyn's head, still perfectly preserved, her eyes closed as if sleeping. One officer staggered back, holding his chest. Another dropped his flashlight. The air smelled like metal and something sweet, too sweet. They found blood-stained robes, animal bones, locks of human hair tied in red thread, and a ledger, names, dates, rituals. At the top, written in Pastor Nathan's neat handwriting, "To remain in light, feed the altar with love." They didn't wait. They sealed the room, called for backup. And before dawn, the news had reached police headquarters. Pastor Nathan was arrested at 5:42 a.m., just before morning devotion. His eyes were red, not from sleep, from something else, something deeper. As the officers placed him in the back of the van, he didn't struggle. He only said one thing. "You don't understand," she volunteered. Long before the sermons, the suits, the healing crusades, Nathan Owusu was just a hungry boy in Chokorakra. His mother sold tomatoes at the roadside. His father left when he was 8. Nathan didn't own a pair of proper shoes until he was 15. But what he had was a voice. A gentle voice. The kind that made people listen. In school, teachers said, "This boy will be a lawyer." But Nathan didn't want courtrooms. He wanted pulpits. At 19, he joined a small prayer group under a mango tree. They fasted for days, slept on concrete floors, and believed that if they prayed hard enough, fire would fall from heaven. It didn't. But Nathan kept showing up. That's where he met Evelyn Asare, a quiet girl with big eyes and even bigger faith. She had dreams of becoming a midwife, but said God had told her, "Support this man. He will lead nations." They married young. No reception, no white dress, just soda and groundnut cake under a leaking canopy. Evelyn believed in Nathan more than Nathan believed in himself. For years, they hustled. They moved from one corner church to another. Nathan preached to plastic chairs. Evelyn led praise with only a tambourine. They had no children for 6 years. People whispered, but they smiled through it. Then one day, something changed. Nathan had traveled to Kumasi for a revival program. Only 20 people showed up, but when he touched a woman with a twisted arm, her bones snapped back into place. It was the first miracle. From that moment, things moved fast. Newspapers called him the young prophet. Videos of his healing services went viral. He was invited to Kenya, Nigeria, even Dubai, and Grace Tower International was born. But Evelyn noticed something else. Nathan no longer prayed the same. He started disappearing for days, saying he was on the mountain. He came back with new phrases, new teachings about sacrifice, about pain that births power. Once, she found him staring into a bowl of water in their bedroom. "What are you doing?" she asked. He smiled and said, "Listening." "To what?" Evelyn asked. He didn't answer. She told him, "If God is speaking to you through water, then something is wrong." Nathan didn't argue. He just held her hands and whispered, "You said you'd support me, no matter what." She didn't know then that the what would mean giving up her life. The miracles were no longer enough. Nathan stood on the pulpit one evening, sweat pouring down his back. He had just prayed for a boy with sickle cell, but nothing happened. The boy's mother kept staring, waiting. The congregation waited too. Nathan forced a smile, wiped his face, and muttered, "God's time is the best." But deep inside, something cracked. After church, he locked himself in his office, punched the desk, screamed, "Why does it work sometimes and other times nothing?" That night, he didn't go home. Instead, he drove 2 hours into Aburi Hills, guided only by a strange phone number written on the back of a tattered flyer someone had handed him months ago after a crusade. The card said, "Prophet Nyame, for power that never fails." The road to the compound was rough. Trees bent low like they were hiding secrets. Nathan parked, heart pounding. An old woman met him at the gate. She had no shoes, no eyebrows, her eyes were milky white. "You've come," she said before he spoke. "The spirits told us you would." Nathan hesitated. I want to carry power, real power, not this on and off type." She turned and led him through a narrow path. At the end sat a small hut. Inside, Prophet Nyame, barefoot, shirtless, skin like old leather, sat beside a bowl of burning herbs. He didn't look up. "I know who you are," the man said. "The one who touches the sick, but doubts if he's truly chosen." Nathan dropped to his knees. "I need help." Nyame finally looked at him. His voice came like dry leaves. "Then feed the altar." "What do you mean?" The old man reached for a wooden box. Inside were cowries, feathers, and a red string soaked in something sticky. He tied it around Nathan's wrist. "To keep this power," he said, "you must give it something back. Not money, not goats, not strangers." Nathan's lips trembled. "Then what?" Nyame smiled. A slow, chilling smile. "Love. Give it what you love, and it will give you what you want." Nathan staggered back. I can't do that." "You will," the man said. "You have already decided the minute you walked in here." That night, Nathan didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, Evelyn snoring gently beside him. He looked at her face, the same face that once comforted him after every failure. He whispered, "I'm sorry." But in his heart, the decision was already made. It rained that night. Not the usual soft aqua drizzle, but a heavy, angry storm that shook window panes and flooded gutters. Inside the Owusu mansion, the generator hummed. The lights flickered, and Evelyn was packing. She had seen too much. She had found a dead pigeon under the bed, its wings folded neatly, eyes missing. She had smelled strange incense drifting up from the basement late at night. She had watched Nathan pray in a language no one taught him. And that day, she had found her wedding ring in a bowl of red oil on an altar built from her old Bible pages. She zipped her bag, tears running down her face. Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone. She called her brother again. "Michael, come for me. I'm leaving tonight. If I wait, I won't wake up." Michael's voice cracked. "Sis, are you safe now?" She glanced toward the door. "He's not back yet, but I don't know for how long." Then the lights went out. The house fell into a silence so loud it felt like a scream. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. "Nathan?" she called. No answer. She grabbed a torchlight. The beam shook in her hand as she crept toward the living room. Then she saw him, standing at the end of the hallway, soaked from the rain, still wearing his white suit. But his eyes, they were empty. "Where are you going?" he asked softly. "I'm leaving," Evelyn whispered. This version of you scares me." Nathan took a step forward. "You said you'd support me." "Not like this," she cried. "This isn't God, Nathan. It's something else." He closed his eyes and whispered something under his breath. The candles in the basement lit themselves. Evelyn gasped. What have you done?" He moved closer. "Do you know what it feels like to be called by God, but forgotten by men? I begged him for power. He was silent, but the spirits, they listened." She backed away. "Nathan, please. I'm your wife." He touched her cheek. "That's why it has to be you." The last thing she saw was a red rope soaked in oil. The last thing she heard was his whisper. "Power demands pain." By the time Michael arrived 30 minutes later, the house was locked. No sign of Evelyn, no blood, no scream, just her slippers facing the door and lit candles on the floor. The courtroom was packed, not with strangers, but with faces that had once called him daddy. Men who had given testimonies, women who had named their babies after him, youths who once knelt to touch his shoes, now sat with folded arms, eyes cold, mouths silent. Pastor Nathan Owusu stood in the dock, hands cuffed, beard grown wild. His white suit was gone, replaced by a plain brown prison shirt with a faded number across the chest. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Owusu, you are charged with murder, desecration of a corpse, and unlawful possession of human remains. How do you plead?" Nathan didn't answer. His lawyer leaned over. "Pastor, say something." He looked up slowly. His eyes scanned the room, stopping on the front row. A woman in black sat holding a framed photo, Evelyn. Her younger brother Michael sat beside her, fists clenched, tears hanging but not falling. Then Nathan spoke. "I did it," gasps echoed across the room. "I killed my wife," he continued, voice shaking. "I took her life, and I laid her head on the altar, not because I hated her, but because I loved power more." The judge stared in disbelief. "Mr. Owusu, are you confessing voluntarily?" Nathan nodded. "Yes, no threats, no pressure, just truth." He looked at the gallery. "You all called me God's battle axe. You said I healed, that I raised the dead. But what you saw on the pulpit was never me alone." He closed his eyes. There was another voice, one that promised power, one that told me, "Feed me love, and I will feed you greatness." He pointed to the ceiling. "You think God did those miracles? You're wrong. It was something else, something darker, something I let in." A woman fainted in the back row. Another screamed, "Jesus, save us." Nathan's voice cracked. "The first sacrifice was a dove, then a cat, then my cousin." Nobody noticed, because the miracles blinded everyone. He wiped a tear, but the altar needed more. It always needs more. And when Evelyn found out, she became the next offering. Silence. Then the judge spoke slowly. "Do you feel any remorse?" Nathan looked down. "I feel empty." He turned to Michael, eyes hollow. "She tried to save me, and I dragged her into the fire." As the guards took him away, someone in the gallery whispered, "That's not a man of God. This man is evil." And still, Nathan didn't fight. He didn't cry. He only whispered to himself, "This is what it cost, and I paid it in full." The church gates were chained shut. Thick, rusted padlocks hung on the entrance of Grace Tower International Ministries. The same gates that once welcomed thousands now stood like tombstones. The giant LED screen that used to display Miracle Hour with Pastor Nathan now blinked black, flickering like a dying eye. The city of Accra was quiet, but not with peace, with shame. Shop owners whispered. Mothers pointed and hushed their children. Every newspaper headline screamed the same thing. Pastor confesses to killing wife for power. People stopped saying amen so quickly. They stopped raising their hands when preachers shouted, "Receive it." They had seen what power could really cost. And the name Nathan Owusu became a warning, not a praise. Inside the police headquarters, a young officer named Kofi walked down the evidence room aisle. He opened a cabinet labeled Case 331 and pulled out a box. Inside was Nathan's old Bible, stained, torn, and inside the front cover something new had been scribbled in red ink. "I wanted to carry the light, but it burned me instead." The prison where Nathan was held was cold, silent. No fan, no windows, just 4 walls and 1 bed. He sat on the floor, knees to his chest, mumbling verses. Not preaching, just repeating them like lullabies. "Though I walk through the valley, though I walk." He no longer asked for bail. He didn't want visitors. The court sentenced him to life in prison. But the real punishment wasn't the bars. It was the silence. The silence of Evelyn's absence. The silence of miracles that had stopped flowing. And the silence of the voices that once whispered power, now gone. At home, Michael returned to Evelyn's bedroom. Her wedding dress still hung on the back of the closet door. Her journal lay open on the bed, the last page reading, "I fear what my husband is becoming, but I still believe there's light in him, somewhere." Michael shut the book and cried like a boy. Elsewhere, church members tried to move on. Some found new pastors, some stopped attending altogether. Others returned to simple fellowships under trees, where prayers felt like breathing again, not performance. And at the site of Grace Tower, stray dogs roamed the altar. The once anointed oil jars now held rainwater, the pulpit broken, because when the shepherd falls, the sheep scatter. And the light, once blinding, now flickered, like a flame running out of breath. In a quiet village outside Kumasi, an old woman sat beneath a mango tree, peeling oranges with trembling hands. Her wrapper was faded, her voice weak. But her eyes still held fire. She was Mama Owusu, Nathan's mother. When the news reached her what her son had done, she didn't scream. She didn't faint like the others. She just stared at the ground, as if searching for the exact moment everything changed. I raised him to fear God, she whispered, not to feed devils. Now every time she passed the village chapel, children stopped to stare. Adults looked away, some even crossed the road. The shame wasn't just Nathan's. It spread like smoke into every room, every heart that once called him man of God. Back in Accra, the Grace Tower compound was being torn down. Bulldozers moved in, breaking walls, crushing the altar. The government said the land would become a public park, a place of rest, not ritual. At the center of it, a memorial stone was placed. No name, no photo, just words etched in black. Not all fire comes from heaven. Beware the light that asks for blood. Meanwhile, Nathan Owusu sat in prison, thinner now, his beard like wool, his eyes sunken. Reporters begged for interviews. He refused them all. But one day, a prison chaplain entered with the Bible. Nathan looked up slowly. "Why are you here?" The chaplain sat across from him. "To remind you, even fallen men can find mercy." Nathan laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. "Do you know what I did?" The chaplain nodded. "Yes, but I also know what God can do." Nathan stared at the Bible. "I once thought I was special, chosen. But maybe I was just desperate. Maybe. The devil doesn't need to shout. Maybe he just waits for hungry men." The chaplain stood. "Then let the hunger die." Nathan said nothing as the man walked away. But later that night, he opened the Bible and wept quietly for the first time in years, not for himself, but for Evelyn. Because sometimes the greatest punishment is not prison, it's remembering. And far beyond the prison walls, churchgoers across Ghana began to ask deeper questions. They watched their pastors. They checked their hearts. They didn't run after miracles so quickly anymore. They listened for love in the voices that preached. Because now they knew. Not every healing is holy. Not every man with a mic carries the light. Some just wear the white suit and hide darkness underneath. If this story touched your heart, opened your eyes, or made you reflect, like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Thank you.